What happens when you're in control of your finances, your career, and your well-being? There's no limit to what you can achieve. I'm your host, Jay Vickery, bringing you on a journey through finance, fitness, and finesse, a podcast about developing your 8 dimensions of wellness. If you're looking to elevate your wealth, well-being, and discover the power of balance, join me bi-weekly, Mondays and Fridays, to learn why money matters, but wellness counts. Hey Finessers! Welcome back to another episode of Finance, Fitness, and Finesse. I'm your host, Jay Vic, and today on Fitness Finesse Friday, we're exploring the connection between our emotions and our wallets. Our emotions can have a huge impact on how we manage our money. Let's get into it. Think of a time where maybe you were sad, stressed, or anxious, and you went out and you bought something that you know you enjoy to help you just get a little bit of that serotonin boost. When our emotions manage our money, it can lead to impulse spending as a way to feel better. On the flip side, being happy or excited can lead to spending on rewards or treats more than we normally would. Emotions also impact our risk-taking with money. Fear, for example, can make us avoid investments that can potentially grow our wealth, even from straightforward options like high-yield savings accounts and online banks. Managing debt can be even tougher if we're feeling overwhelmed, leading to avoidance or denial instead of taking action to pay it off. Setting and sticking to financial goals can also be a barrier if we're feeling discouraged or defeated, making it hard to stay motivated to save or invest for the future. And especially in our relationships, emotions can affect how we talk about money with our partners or family members. Emotional intelligence involves recognizing and managing our emotions while understanding how they can affect our environment. It's a key skill that impacts every part of our lives, including how we handle our money. When someone has a high level of emotional intelligence, they typically are very self-aware. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand our emotional state and its effect on others. Self-awareness is part of the foundation of effective money management. The more aware we are of our emotional triggers, the better we're able to understand how they impact our spending and saving habits. Once we have a good grasp on what the trigger is, we can move to make better and more productive decisions in the moment. For example, have you ever found yourself making impulsive purchases when you're stressed or unhappy? Or maybe you've avoided looking at your bank statements because of anxiety or fear. These are examples of how our emotions can drive our financial behaviors. Whether you want to recognize it or not, we've all engaged in a little retail therapy at some point. Retail therapy happens when we use some form of shopping to make us feel better and use those quick hits of serotonin and dopamine to replace those distressing emotions that we're experiencing in the moment. While it might give you a quick mood boost, it can lead to impulsive buying and financial stress in the long run if it's reoccurring. Now, I'm not saying that you can never buy anything for yourself. But to cope with retail therapy and make sure that we're moving forward in our financial wellness, we need to become aware of our state of being when we get the urge to impulse buy. State of being is just a fancy way of saying how we exist or feel at a particular moment. When I find myself doom scrolling through products or having the urge to order food that I might not really need, I ask myself, am I feeling stressed, sad, or bored in this moment? What is my state of being right now? Again, I'm not saying you should never treat yourself. Like we talked about in this week's More Money Mondays episode, it's okay to set aside money for personal wants after we take care of our needs. In fact, I recommend that you set aside spending money. Out of each paycheck, I specifically set out a certain amount of money that I want to spend on whatever I want. That also makes it so that when I do decide to splurge on something, I don't have to feel bad at all. Now, there are times when the spending money's running low, and that's where I need to get ready to address whoever I'm going out with that I have some limitations in what I can spend. But usually that doesn't happen because I've figured out the right budget for me in correlation with the amount of times I would need it each month as I go out and interact socially. Set aside money for your personal wants, but after you take care of your needs. Alright, so let's talk about emotional maturity. This refers to how we handle our emotions and navigate the world around us. It includes responsibility for our actions, regulating our emotions in a healthy way, and being resilient in the face of challenges. Emotional maturity is especially important when it comes to our money, of course. It means making thoughtful decisions based on long-term goals rather than giving in to those impulsive desires. But again, this requires a huge level of self-awareness, both that can come with intentional skill building and also with regular life experience. When there's a high level of emotional maturity in a person, typically they're also good at self-regulation. That's what helps us manage our negative or disruptive emotions and not let them control our behaviors. For example, instead of splurging on something expensive just because we're feeling down, we can recognize that emotion and choose a healthier way to deal with it. This can help us stay on track with our financial goals and avoid unnecessary debt, on top of the debt that I'm sure we've all accumulated. So, what are some ways that we can consciously work to improve our emotional intelligence and maturity? I want you to think back to a time where you remember you went a really long time without eating and you started to feel irritable. You know, that hangry feeling. In scenario 1, you might snap at the people around you, taking out your frustration on them without even realizing it. This negative energy can spread, and it makes everybody else irritable too. All of a sudden, you're in the middle of a fight and you don't even know why you're fighting. That energy is known as an emotional contagion. But in scenario 2, you notice that you're hungry and becoming irritable. It happens to all of us. You realize your interactions aren't as genuine. Thanks to your awareness that you're trying to develop your emotional intelligence, you acknowledge that your emotions may be affecting others. Then your emotional maturity kicks in and you take responsibility for your actions. You say, hey, I'm getting really hungry and it's affecting how I'm acting. I need to grab some food. Maybe the person you were about to argue with decides to join you. Instead of everyone being cranky, you both go get a sandwich and solve the problem together. This example shows how emotional intelligence and maturity go hand in hand to help us navigate situations and improve our relationships. Before I share some techniques to develop your emotional skills, you need to know that starting this journey can be a little uncomfortable. As you try to look inward and evaluate yourself, there's a good chance it's going to bring up some insecurities. But let me ask you this. Have you ever gotten better at anything without making mistakes at first? Here are a few active ways to build emotional intelligence and maturity. Of course, we all know the techniques for stress management, such as deep breathing or meditation, but those aren't always ideal for everyone. What I want to introduce is practicing empathy through active listening. Active listening is a communication technique that involves giving full attention to the person speaking, trying to understand their message from their perspective, and responding appropriately to show understanding. Now, active listening is a very, very high-end skill in regards to communication. It's really difficult to take out your own bias, especially when you're in an argumentative conversation or a moment of confrontation. Something that might be effective if you feel the urge to interrupt someone is try to think of a question that you can ask them from what they're saying. There's also various grounding techniques you can use to improve your emotional regulation that you can usually do anywhere. A popular method that I like is the 5 senses grounding technique. It helps you stay present and calm by focusing on your senses. For example, if you're in a really stressful environment or you're feeling overwhelmed by all of the people around you, all you need to do is take a breath and name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. The taste one can be a little bit weird, but it's usually the last thing that you ate or drank is what I try to do, or I just imagine something. But this technique can be really beneficial when you're feeling overwhelmed. As always, be sure to check out the show notes for different resources you can refer to. I want to be sure to highlight that conflict resolution is a type of social skill that impacts our level of emotional intelligence and maturity. Conflict resolution doesn't only include standing up for yourself and trying to come to a common denominator with whoever you're having the conflict with, but it involves seeking feedback from trusted individuals and being open to criticism, preferably constructive criticism. Living in a world where we're constantly trying to prove ourselves and keep up with the Joneses, it is not always easy to take criticism. But if we can work to understand that knowledge of our flaws helps us turn them into strengths, then we can work to use that criticism to our advantage. You don't even have to agree with everything someone is saying if they're trying to give you criticism or constructive criticism. Just take in the information, try to observe it objectively, and then think of ways that you can apply it to your life so you can make adjustments in your thought processes or actions in the future. In order to grow, you need to learn to embrace being uncomfortable. Life is uncomfortable anyway, so we might as well work it to our advantage for our well-being. Here's a few quick tips for you to keep in mind. First, regularly question your own opinions. It's a great way to stay open-minded. Questions are the key to knowledge. If you're not asking questions, especially of yourself, then you're not seeking to discover something more. Always take time to celebrate the positive moments, no matter how small. Before I go to bed, I have a little sticky note next to my bed that I write, what is the W of the day? What's the win of the day? And sometimes it's the fact that I just got out of bed and made it on time to wherever I had to go. Other times it's the fact that I decided to reflect on my day and I remembered to do it. That doesn't mean to ignore the negative stuff. That would just be disingenuous. Sometimes the win of the day is surviving something challenging or negative that happened. Address it, learn from it, grow from it. You need to stand up for yourself, even against your own self-doubt. Have guts to engage in something that you don't know. Have guts to embrace the unknown, because the unknown is where you are going to discover the things that you have been lacking in your life that you're seeking. There's nothing wrong with comfortability. Humans hate change because it's also part of our survival instinct. We stick with what is known and safe, and we stay away from the unknown because it's not guaranteed. For those who are seeking to make a genuine change, again, the key words here are genuine versus disingenuous. There's a large amount of people walking around, talking to their friends, talking to random people that they come across throughout their day, just how maybe unhappy they are, the lack of content they may have in their lives, how unfair everything is. Well, if things are unfair, go out and accumulate knowledge on how to change it. Take that knowledge and put it into action. I guess what I'm saying here is don't let complacency consume you. I think that complacency is very uncomfortable. Because if you know that you're unhappy in a current state of being, you're already uncomfortable. So you might as well be uncomfortable in pursuit of growth and change. As the Buddha said, with each breath, I'm a new person. This is where finesse comes in. Choosing to skillfully manage situations with a mix of intricacy, savviness, and awareness. Think about it. We now know how our emotions drive our decisions, actions, and relationships. When it comes to money, emotional intelligence can help us navigate those tricky financial conversations and negotiate better deals. Plus, knowing those emotional triggers, again, can stop us from making impulsive financial choices we might regret later. Being in the driver's seat of the action and behavior we choose to take after experiencing the emotion is how we can move forward with that finesse. This means making smarter, more strategic decisions that really align with our goals and values. Embracing emotional wealth doesn't mean that we're just financially savvy, but we're also emotionally balanced. As we close this episode out, I want to make sure that you finessers remember, emotional intelligence and maturity allows us to respond instead of react. This applies to all dimensions of our life. As we become more conscious of our emotions and how they shape our behavior, we can finally take charge of our financial wellness. Be the boss of your money moods. That's all for today's episode of Fitness Finesse Fridays. I appreciate you for tuning in. I'm just getting started, and I would love for you to help me learn with you by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and reaching out with any questions you would like me to investigate. I'm Jay Vick, wishing you a happy Friday and friendly reminder to keep dripping in finesse. See you on the Savvy Sunday Scholar to talk about how money impacts relationship dynamics. For a disclaimer, although I am obtaining a degree and certifications to pursue financial therapy, I am not your personal therapist or personal financial consultant. It is important to seek professional advice when able and necessary. And if you don't know, now you know.